Iran has stunned the United States by continuing to export weapons abroad, at a time when Washington itself is grappling with ammunition and arms shortages after months of intense conflict. Tehran has reportedly transferred silent short-range air defense technology to a foreign partner, providing missile systems to a country that only recently signed a major deal with the US. This marks the first known foreign deployment of Iran's special Majid surface-to-air missiles, with the systems now believed to be operational on Armenian soil to bolster its air defenses. The fact that Iran has enough weapon stock to sell abroad is fueling claims in some quarters that Israel and the US may have overstated the scale of damage inflicted on Iran's military industry during the war. Despite being locked in a brutal war with both the United States and Israel, Iran is still exporting key weapon systems abroad, according to multiple open-source defense reports, signaling that its arms industry remains functional and resilient. Tehran has exported its indigenously developed Majid short-range air defense system to Armenia, marking a significant expansion of Iran's military footprint into the South Caucasus at a highly sensitive moment. This development was reported by Defense Security Asia on May 27, and it comes amid rising fears that the wider regional war could restart after only a brief and fragile lull in fighting. The revelation about Majid's export surfaced just as the United States and Armenia signed a new strategic partnership pact, highlighting the complex overlap between Iranian and American influence in Yerevan. The US-Armenia agreement reportedly covers cooperation on critical minerals and a major transit corridor project centered on Yerevan, giving Washington an important economic and logistical foothold. Majid is considered special because it operates in near-total silence during both target acquisition and missile engagement, making it far harder for adversaries to detect when the system is active. According to technical analyses cited by Defense Security Asia, Majid prioritizes passive thermal tracking to follow targets instead of relying primarily on radar emissions that can give away its position. By contrast, most other short-range air defense systems depend on radar illumination and strong active sensor signatures, which make them much easier to locate and suppress with weapons. Majid's silent profile therefore complicates enemy efforts to find and destroy the launchers, significantly enhancing their survivability on a contested battlefield. Reports say the Majid missile system was delivered to Armenia ahead of its May 28 Republic Day celebrations, suggesting it may be showcased during official events and military parades. Iranian-made Majid missiles and their associated launch vehicles have already been identified at a rehearsal in Yerevan, Defense Security Asia noted, indicating that they are now physically in country and operational. This represents the first known operational deployment of the Majid system beyond Iranian territory, underlining Tehran's growing role as an exporter of modern air defense technology. At the same time, there is growing evidence that the United States is exhausting some categories of weapons faster than it can replace them, according to assessments carried by Al Jazeera and other outlets. In the Iran war, the US has heavily relied on 7 categories of critical munitions. Washington-based XIS think tank has warned, raising concerns about long-term stockpile health. For 4 of these key systems, XIS estimates that more than half of the pre-war inventory has already been expended, leaving US planners with much thinner margins for future crises. These heavily used systems include THAAD interceptors, Patriot air defense missiles, and SM-3 and SM-6 ship-launched missiles that form the backbone of American and Allied missile defense. By April 21, XIS assessed that the US had fired more than 1,000 Tomahawk cruise missiles out of an estimated stock of about 3,100, depleting nearly 1/3 of that arsenal in under 2 months of war. The Washington Post reported that the US used up roughly half of its THAAD interceptor inventory in efforts to shield Israel and regional bases from Iranian missile salvos, a massive drawdown of a niche capability. Overall, US forces are said to have launched about 200 THAAD missiles and around 100 Standard Missile 3 and Standard Missile 6 interceptors, while Israel itself fired only about 190 interceptors across its own systems, according to compiled reporting. XIS now estimates that rebuilding US stockpiles of these 7 key types of munitions back to pre-war levels will take between 1 and 4 years, underscoring how strategically costly the Iran conflict has already become for Washington. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has published a video showing its air defense units shooting down a US MQ-9 drone, using the footage to highlight what it portrays as a clear breach of its skies and a successful intercept. According to Fast News, the drone allegedly violated Iranian airspace over the Persian Gulf region, giving Tehran a pretext to target and destroy the aircraft as part of its broader air defense posture. The downing of the US drone was also reported by Sputnik International on May 27, amplifying the incident to an international audience and reinforcing Iran's narrative of resisting American military pressure. Iranian sources said the MQ-9 was identified and destroyed after precise intelligence monitoring near Bandar Abbas, suggesting that the intercept was the result of deliberate tracking rather than a chance encounter. The IRGC further claimed that Iranian forces also opened fire on a US RQ-4 surveillance drone and an F-35 fighter jet, signaling a more assertive stance against what it calls hostile incursions in its vicinity. The IRGC warned the US military against further ceasefire violations, framing any future incursions or strikes as red lines that will provoke strong and immediate responses. Iran's guards also said they regard their right to retaliate as both legitimate and definite, stressing that any perceived aggression will be met with force under what they describe as a lawful defense of their sovereignty. Amid fresh US-Iran tensions, Iran has released new footage showing the wreckage of a downed US drone, turning twisted metal into a visual reminder of how quickly this standoff can escalate. On May 26, Tasnim News put out video of what it says is US drone wreckage, carefully filming the debris to underline that the aircraft did not simply disappear over the Gulf. The video showed charred metal fragments and a heavily damaged drone body, reinforcing Iran's claim that its defenses not only detected the aircraft but brought it crashing down. Iranian media claimed the drone was hunted down by IRGC Khamenei archers, branding the unit as a specialist force capable of tracking and targeting high-value American assets. On May 26, Iran's Revolutionary Guard announced it had shot down a US MQ-9 Reaper drone over the Gulf region, framing the incident as a direct answer to recent US operations near Hormuz. Iran also claimed it opened fire on an F-35 jet and an RQ-4 reconnaissance drone near its airspace, signaling that even stealth and high-altitude platforms will be challenged if they come too close. The IRGC insisted that its fire forced the F-35 stealth fighter to retreat, using that claim to suggest its systems can push back against one of the most advanced aircraft in the US arsenal. Iranian forces warned they reserve the right to respond to any US violations, making clear that every drone, jet, and strike order near Hormuz could now trigger another cycle of retaliation. Backing the guards, Iran's president publicly hailed the military's defensive capabilities after the latest US strikes, presenting the downed drone as proof that Iran can surprise its enemies in the Gulf.
They did not imagine that our armed forces, our defensive power, and our offensive system could perform such feats. It was a completely surprising matter for all of them.
In the Ramadan War, we achieved a technology that targeted about 210 of the enemy's aircraft. And of course, by the permission of Allah and by their own admission, we were able to cause over $7 billion in damages to the enemy just in this matter alone. Or for example, the targeting of the enemy's stealth aircraft was one of the issues that was placed on the agenda of our dear people in the defense industry from the beginning of the Ramadan War. In less than 10 days, we mastered the technology that allowed us to cause serious damage to the F-35 aircraft and the enemy's advanced aircraft.
The latest drone incident came after US strikes hit targets near the Strait of Hormuz, tying the shoot-down directly to a broader cycle of attack and counterattack in one of the world's most sensitive choke points. Iranian state media claimed several Iranian nationals were killed in those US attacks, using the casualties to argue that Washington's actions go far beyond limited, surgical strikes. US Central Command, in contrast, said its strikes targeted missile sites and boats allegedly laying mines, portraying the operation as a defensive move to keep Hormuz shipping lanes open rather than a push toward full-scale war.